Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I am Senator Akoni Yayin, representing Akwa Ibom South Senatorial District. I rise to move a motion on urgent need to address the sorry state of computer education by providing training for teachers and basic computer facilities in our public schools. The co-sponsors of this motion are as reflected on page 40 of today's orders of the day. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the Senate is aware that the national policy on education recognizes the importance of computer education and ICT by providing for the training of teachers and provisions of basic facilities for teaching computer knowledge in primary schools and secondary schools. Aware that computer knowledge is being taught in primary and secondary schools across Nigeria, theoretically, observes that computer knowledge is a practical subject that must be practiced for effective understanding. Further observes that most public schools in Nigeria lack competent teachers in computer knowledge and the basic facilities to properly teach pupils and students in primary and secondary schools computer knowledge. Senate notes that almost all aspects of Nigerian and global sectors is now ICT based, and our future generation have not been prepared for the future. Senate is reminded that education, inclusive of computer education, is a fundamental right. Accordingly, resolves to urge the federal government and all stakeholders in the education sector to address the sorry state of computer education by providing computer training for teachers in public schools and to provide basic computer facilities for the proper training of pupils and students in computer knowledge. 2, urge the government to formulate a policy for the building and equipping of computer labs in all primary schools in Nigeria. 3, mandate the Committee on Education, when constituted, to liaise with all stakeholders in education to comply with this policy. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is my privilege to lead the debate on this all-important motion, which seeks to address the shortcoming in computer education in our nation. We are in a digital world and have all witnessed the transformation of our lives through technology and through ICT. ICT play basic major role in all fields.
Distinguished colleagues, my name is Betty Apiafi. I represent Rivers West Senatorial District. I'm from Rivers State. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, the world is today at the brink of a technology revolution that will fundamentally change the way we live, the way we work, and the way we relate to one another. And the reason is because of the growing need and the growing importance of computer education. Nigeria has a computer literacy policy, national policy on computer literacy for primary and secondary schools. Some of the objectives of that policy was to equip individuals and students through the understanding of concept of computer to function properly in a technology century, to develop a computer literate society, assist students to appreciate the potentials of computer in its application in various aspects of life and occupation. Unfortunately, this computer policy has not been well implemented, and some of the reasons why it has not been well implemented is because of lack of adequate computer laboratories, adequate qualified computer science teachers, and then of course the lack of sufficient power supply and lack of proper internet or slow connectivity. Mr. President, in the last World Economic Forum, one of the first 4 skills that those looking for jobs need to develop by the year 2020 is technology, design, and programming. And if we as a nation are not keen into this new concept of developing skills in our country, then it means that our children by the year 2020 will probably not have the skills to gain employment, good employment, especially given the fact that Nigeria today is trying to have common markets with other African countries and other European countries. So the world is continually becoming a global village, and for us to participate properly in this global village, we have to have a generation of Nigerian children who will be able to compete with the skills needed to survive in the years ahead. Mr. President, I don't want to take on too much of our time because the mover of this motion, I would like to commend her. She has actually listed a lot of things that should be done in her prayers to improve on this lack of computer education in our schools. I'd like to join her to agree with the prayers she has listed in this motion and ask that this Senate passes this motion so that we can have, when we have the Committee on Education, that is important for us to sit back and look at the policy, the national policy on education, and see how it can be upgraded and fully implemented. Thank you, Mr. President.
No bots, no learning materials, and now we are talking about computer. I agree quite frankly that this motion is up and it's time for us to preach the computer knowledge in our several schools. But at the same time has come when we need to holistically equip our schools in order to impact knowledge on our children. While I am commending my sister for bringing this, I also think that we have to call on federal government to liaise with state governments and local governments to ensure that we have our schools well equipped, not just computer education, to ensure that we have conducive atmosphere for learning to take place in our public institutions. Without that, it will be very difficult for us to meet up with this technology, information, and communication world. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Olorun Tinubu.
Representing Lagos Central Senatorial District, I rise to support this fantastic motion, ably moved by my distinguished colleague here, and also to align myself with all the various contributors to this well-timely motion. I wouldn't say too much, but I just wanted to add that we talk about international best practices, how we're supposed to emulate what they've done. But for us, what we have practiced in Lagos is something I'd like to share. And we talked about the fact that our schools are not well equipped. So when we say we want computer laboratories or centers inside our schools, I don't see how that will be feasible in the nearest future. And since we are moving to the next level, I think one of the things we have done in Lagos which really resonates with this motion this afternoon is that Lagos State built computer centers in designated areas, and I think you were in that administration at that time, my distinguished colleague Senator Okwe Bamidele. What they did was to build computer centers in designated areas where various schools in that environment can go to. We all know that computer knowledge is not necessarily done by teachers. There are people who have the technical know-how and they are trained for that. So that is what Lagos State has done. And all these schools around there, are affiliated to this area and they move there for training, and it has worked for us. And so when it comes to prayer time, I've spoken to my distinguished colleague. We're going to amend prayer 2, and then we'll be able to put that in. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
President, Aisha Tudairo Ahmed Binani, Senator representing Adamawa Central. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we are in the 21st century where the ICT has dominated every aspect of our businesses, social, academic, and cultural life. My distinguished colleagues, I believe can we imagine this modern world now without Twitter, email, e-banking, e-government, Facebook or YouTube, Google, Gmail, Yahoo, and the like, I believe is unimaginable. And if it's unimaginable, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, certainly this age is the age of internet and globalization. And our citizens should not be left behind. Our children must be able to compete favorably with the best in the world. And in my opinion, our children and our adults must be able to be computer literate. And not only to stop at being computer literate, they must be assisted to acquire the 21st needed critically knowledge, such as critical thinking, creativity, media literacy, technology literacy, communication, and the like. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, for us to achieve this, 3 things have to be in place. The first and foremost is that the teachers must have the know-how and the high level of proficiency to integrate the ICT in their teaching. Secondly, we must have our libraries well equipped with computers. And thirdly, we must have steady power supply, be it by solar or otherwise. Mr. President, if any of these 3 is missing, certainly this sorry state will continue to linger. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, having supported this motion, I want this Senate to emphasize on the implementation and the proper coordination and harmonization of the already existing policies, program, roadmaps, blueprints, and plan on the ICT development and integration in our various schools. We don't need to come up with new policies because every policy that we need is already on ground. While I join my other colleagues to appreciate the promoter of this motion, I totally support this motion. Thank you very much.